Hello, welcome to Reality TV. I'm Raymond Bakari. Today I am joined by Dr. Omar Ba, who is the founder of the Refugee Dream Center located in Providence and one of several Democrats running for Rhode Island's 2nd Congressional District following Congressman Jim Langevin's retirement. Dr. Ba, how are you today?
I'm doing great, Raymond. Thanks for inviting me. I look forward to the conversation.
And it's great to have you on. Starting off with my first question here, like I had mentioned in the introduction, you're one of several Democrats running for the now open congressional seat. Can you explain for those watching a little bit about yourself and why you're running for Congress?
Well, great. My name is Omar Ba. I'm an immigrant and former refugee from the Gambia in West Africa. I'm running because I believe in the American dream, because I think I'm a product of the American dream. And I think more than ever before, the American democracy is under threat, and I'm running to defend it because that's the only thing I have. I lived under authoritarian rule. I've seen what dictatorship and tyranny can do to a population and people, denying people their rights. And as a former journalist who was tortured for my work and for what I believed in, I came to value and respect democracy, because in this country, I was given the chance to a second life. I was given the opportunity for freedom of speech and expression and association. And I think given what we've seen under Trump and the threats against democracy by Putin and January 6th, it is time for folks who are the regular Americans working in the streets every day to also have a say, to have a voice, to defend what they cherish, which is the democracy of this great country.
There are a number of issues that you could end up focusing on if elected to Congress, because you're representing Rhode Island's 2nd District, but it'd be also on the national level because the people in Congress, they vote for issues that will not only affect their district, but the country as a whole. What are some of the top priorities you would focus on if elected?
Well, thanks, Raymond. My top priority is equitable economic development, because I think this affects everybody across the board, whether you are young or old, black or white, or despite your economic or social status. I support President Biden's Build Back Better agenda, because I think this will bring in support with struggling mothers who need childcare support, well-paying jobs that are sustainable, but also to help with public education and defend Social Security for our elderly and veterans. I think this is a broad issue that will address issues that the regular American needs in order for us to really move forward in our economic advancement as a nation. So equitable economic development is dear to me. I work with thousands of people every day, every year, and then I'm in hundreds a day. And these are people from different ethnicities, different religions, different neighborhoods within the district. And I know the experiences of folks within the district, and that lived experience is what I want to take to Congress, so that I can use that know-how and also the capability to build bridges to help bring in changes, resources, both to Rhode Island, but across the nation.
One issue I like to ask people who are running for Congress, since it's a popular idea that also is kind of under the radar in recent years, and that's term limits for members of Congress. It's not talked about as much. Our current congressman, he's been in Congress for 20 years. To put that into perspective, I wasn't even thought of yet when he was first elected. Where do you stand on term limits for members of Congress, and why?
Well, absolutely. You know, it is important to emphasize that I'm the only outsider in this race. I'm somebody from the community organizing, and came in because I wanted to not want to wait any longer to be spoken for people who are establishment politicians who probably are out of touch of the realities of the people, to speak for us. So I wanted to come in to have a voice, but also to inspire a younger generation of Americans that if a young person, a young kid from rural Africa without electricity or water or running water or access to education can come and get all the opportunities that America offers to a level of a doctorate within a short time, then you, the younger people in America, can do even better. And that is why I'm running, because I know in Africa, one of my biggest problems with leadership and the underdevelopment of the various countries in that country is because of lack of term limits of presidents. They come in, they stay forever, and then before you notice, there'll be a revolt. People will resist that, and then they'll be over. They will be out of touch of realities, and there will be underdevelopment or problems, political crisis in the country. I always joke with my friends that Congress they are the dictatorship versions of Africa. Of America, because I mean, we have the presidents, they have term limits, governors and mayors. Why not Congress? I support that idea 100%, that there must be term limits. And that is something I will participate in promoting to ensure that the ideals of democracy that we promote in the presidency, in the local and state governments should also be reflected in the House of Representatives and Senate.
Is there a certain amount you would put for the term limits? Because those who are in favor of term limits, I usually hear 12 years. Do you have a specific amount of time you would like to see for term limits if it were implemented?
Well, I think this is going to be a contentious issue, but let's start with at least some let's call it term limits. If it is 8 years, 10 years, 12 years, but at least we've started somewhere where we know that a young American born today, in 20 years, they should also be able to have the opportunity, because the person occupying would have gone. It is not about one person. It should be the idea that everybody should think of trying, and they have a shot at it. Like me, somebody like me coming in, living in the community, person of color, speaking with an accent, and turning the American dream, thinking, well, I can try. I would not have tried if Langevin was still running, because it's the power of incumbency. But how often do we have opportunities like that? I think and support the idea that term limits should be implemented.
You had talked a lot about our democracy earlier, which plays into one of my topics here. Voting rights is a key policy proposal the Democrats are focused on. For example, H.R. 1 is a bill that they've been trying to pass. It would do a number of things like end gerrymandering, make mail-in voting more universal, try to take dark money out of politics, etc. How would you vote for a bill like H.R. 1 if it were reintroduced in 2023?
Well, I introduce myself as a regular American who is not part of the political establishment. I'm very authentic in with what I'm saying. I'm not afraid of making mistakes or trying or speaking out my mind. If I make a mistake, I accept. But that is why what I'm telling you, I mean this. I cannot think of a situation where in this day and age, the best and biggest democracy in the world is actually opposing certain sectors of our democracy who are opposing the opportunities for marginalized communities to vote, or trying to gerrymander to help incumbents, especially in Republican-controlled legislatures, to protect their incumbency. So I think those are among my top priorities. That's why when I say defend the democracy, I mean promoting voting rights, especially in marginalized communities, protecting districts against gerrymandering, especially against Republican gerrymandering, because that's really what they're trying to do to help their incumbency. So we also have to eliminate stuff like voter ID laws, because if somebody is a citizen and they're qualified to vote, there shouldn't be any instances where we put in these obstacles for them to not be able to vote. I think elections day should also be a public holiday in this country, because that is an obstacle for many people, especially working class people, to go to vote, because they would rather stay and earn a couple of dollars at work than lose that amount and go to work. So these are all systemic approaches that prevent people from voting. And this is what I see every day. I work within the immigrant and refugee community. A lot of them become citizens, they don't vote. They don't even know when election day is, because the obstacles are already there, ingrained in their minds, to the extent that they think this is not for me. They care about the passport, they want to travel, but elections, they are not engaged, they are not motivated to vote. So I think this is an attack against democracy, and the people promoting it know exactly what they are doing, because it serves their interest, because their voter base are likely to vote and somebody else is likely not to vote. And this is what I mean by defend democracy. I also want to defend democracy, defend the dream, by standing up to extremist Republicans like Trump. His lies that the environment, climate change is a hoax, and then attacking efforts to curtail COVID-19. And January 6th, we cannot live in a country where we see people, in essence, staging a coup against the best democracy in the world, and we call it normal freedom of association or normalizing it. That is not correct. Personally, as somebody who lived under both environments, authoritarian rule and dictatorship and democracy, certainly I think we as Americans are taking a lot for granted, because I see the two options, and democracy is certainly a better option. And I will stand and fight fiercely, just like I did on a dictatorship, to the extent that I was declared a wanted person as a journalist. I want to be there and fight and defend the rights of Americans, defend democracy, and protect this freedom that we all value.
Shifting the topic to immigration for a moment, it's a key issue facing the country. It's a complicated topic that's multi-layered. Some kind of immigration reform is something that both Republicans and Democrats sort of agree upon. Are there any pieces of legislation you would either plan to introduce or co-sponsor when it comes to immigration reform?
Well, yeah, thank you. Immigration is by default part of my life, my identity. As a former refugee coming to this country, knowing nothing from a refugee camp situation, and then coming and being given the chance to a second life, I can never be more grateful. And I think it will be disservice to the millions of people living in this country already here who don't have any path to regularized stay. So I think there should be efforts to look into this, to ensure that people who are living in this country, some of them for generations, I have an uncle from New York, who just returned to Gambia. He was here for over 30 years. No documentation, he had to leave. And he has a child who is 26 years, born in this country, and is here. So those are the kind of people we should look into. How do we regularize their stay? How do we help them to participate equitably in the economy, but also to show them and give them the dignity that a human being deserves? This is different from saying, like, open the borders for everybody in the world to come. And I think even when we talk about the borders, we should tie this to foreign policy. What do we do as a nation and as a superpower to prevent the fall of regimes like Afghanistan, where we'll end up having to accept hundreds of thousands of Afghans into this country because we feel some sort of moral responsibility for our involvement and also for the failure of the regime there? What do we do to prevent people like Putin, in their attack against Western democracy, like we see the crisis in Ukraine right now? What do we do about climate change to prevent flooding and weather patterns and drought that will engineer terrorism and fighting and conflicts and displacements of millions of people, more displacement and refugee crisis than the industrialized world has ever seen? So you cannot talk about immigration without talking about climate change, without talking about foreign policy of the United States of America, without talking about the faults that are already here. So what I'm proposing is that I go to Congress, use my lived experience, and say, look, we are a nation. Our primary interest should be the interest of this nation. And folks that are already here and our foreign policy engagement outside are intertwined with how we want to live with everybody currently living within this space in continental United States. Meaning there should be comprehensive immigration reform, focusing primarily on people who are already here and see how we can give them a path to stay in a regularized form and potentially citizenship, and then work very hard to prevent the fall of regimes, prevent dictatorship in different parts of the world. No matter whether we accept it or not, we are democracy police across the world, and also preventing climate change. We cannot certainly do it alone, but people take cues from us, other countries. So we take the lead in investing in renewable energy, clean and renewable energy, so that that can promote and encourage other nations to follow suit, to the extent that we protect the planet, but also prevent a humanitarian disaster that is coming in the next 20, 30 years. And you start with drought and flooding, and then we know how that can create conflicts and displacement of probably billions of people.
There are a lot of issues that are also nationalized when it comes to congressional races. I have a couple shorter ones here. are you for or against statehood for Washington, D.C. and Puerto Rico?
Well, I mean, I think that has to be, I mean, as somebody who is from a country that was colonized, I'm not calling this colonialism as part of the Commonwealth and as a protectorate state, sort of a country of its own, but because they are under our protectorate status, we cannot decide for them. I think it should be left to a referendum.
Well, I believe Puerto Rico had voted in favor of their referendum, and in order for this to happen, Congress would have to pass it, and then it'd have to be signed by the president. So hypothetically speaking, you're in Congress, January 2023, that bill goes to the floor for Washington, D.C. and Puerto Rico statehood. Would you vote for it or against it?
I'll absolutely vote for it. If as long as the people of Puerto Rico accept and want to be part of the United States. And I think strategically, it is important for us because Puerto Rico, the people of Puerto Rico, culturally, they're part of the United States legally, but also the geographical location of that territory. It's important for the United States and the countries that surround it. Just imagine if Putin, Russia happens to overtake that country, that state, that is not good for us. So I think territories like Puerto Rico should be shown the value they deserve, and we should have a conversation as a nation. I will, yes. If it's a yes or no question, yes, I think I will vote for that.
Okay, and another one, it's kind of a yes or no. There's a push to add more Supreme Court justices to the Supreme Court. This, like the DC and Puerto Rico statehood, would just need a simple piece of legislation passed through. How would you vote on that?
Well, I think there are two things. This is more than a yes or no question for me. If we are to stay with 9, I think it should be as diverse as possible. If it does not matter if we have more judges and they are homogeneous and just represent one kind of people or one kind of background. So what is important for me is the diversity and equitable representation.
So just to get a definitive answer for that kind of legislation, undecided right now would be the best characterization for how you'd vote on that?
No, not absolutely. I think I would advocate for equitable representation rather than before adding, because what is the point of adding? Let's say we have only men in the Supreme Court, hypothetically, and then we add 3 more judges and they're all men. What is the point of that? It is okay to add as long as we are advocating for equitable and diverse representation in the makeup of the Supreme Court. So the current number is fine with me as long as it's equitable, and then we can still add. So I think for me, it's really cannot be as black and white, yes or no question. It should be more about equitable representation of the various peoples and backgrounds and experiences that make up this country.
Another question I want to ask, if you were elected to Congress, 2022 is an interesting election cycle. Midterm historical precedent shows that the House might flip to the Republicans, and that would then mean that there needs to be a vote for the House Minority Leader on the Democratic side. And if you were elected, you'd be casting a vote for that. Do you have anybody in mind you'd vote for House Minority Leader or even Speaker if the Democrats retain the House?
Well, anybody, well, not Kevin McCarthy, absolutely, but yes, we want the Democrats to keep the House, and I think that's why this is crucial for Rhode Island, for the Democratic Party. They should look inward and see that this is an opportunity for the Democratic Party, one, to keep this seat, but also to think about how this will affect the people, not only of this state, but the entire country. They're thinking of tax cuts for the rich and thinking about themselves. When we are dealing with economic crisis and issues of pandemic that need to be addressed right now, and they will not talk about, they probably don't even care. We have a crucial race in Rhode Island, and I'm the only outsider. I'm the only one that can appeal to a certain kind of people, working class people, people who identify with me from ethnic or racial backgrounds. If we go against, let's say, Aaron Fong, and then it is not me, the people who identify with me we should remember they are very likely to sway or to be grabbed by the Republican Party, and we just need to remember that as a Democratic Party.
Okay, yeah, I get it. It is indeed a crucial race, but when it comes to voting for Democratic leadership, a House Minority Leader or a Speaker, is there a specific Democrat? Even Nancy Pelosi, would you cast a vote for a Speaker or House Minority Leader Pelosi?
Yeah, I think Pelosi is a great leader. I mean, of course, you cannot agree on everything, but as long as it stays with the Democratic Party rather than a Republican,
it would be Nancy Pelosi.
I'm willing to work with them. Yeah.
Okay. My final question is one that I ask everyone on the show. It's a non-political one to end things off away from politics. And my final question is, in your opinion, what do you think Rhode Island is best known for?
Well, I'm small. I'm from the smallest nation in Africa to the smallest state. So I think it's known for its beautiful beaches. And also, when I came here, I found out that it was founded by Roger Williams, who was yearning for freedom. Religious freedom, but also personal liberties. And when I came, I mean, even before coming across the world, you hear about this notion, this concept of philosophy of freedom in America, people loving freedom, living free lives. And then I realized that is actually, that idea was born out of the founding of Rhode Island. I don't think many Americans noticed that. It was born out of here by Roger Williams, not wanting to be controlled and wanting freedom, and then running here, meeting with the Native Americans, and then getting the land and founding the state of Rhode Island. That really inspired me. I think the fact that I live in a state that was founded on the philosophy of freedom, and I was running to see, I was seeking freedom. I think that is what this state is best known for. You know, it is the founding of the American doctrine of freedom, and we should value that. And it is beyond just the beautiful beaches and the small size where everybody knows everybody. And I think we should promote that idea of freedom, and then we should be seen as the free-loving people of the nation.
That's interesting. I've never heard that answer before. I really like that. That's the first time I've heard that. Dr. Baugh, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been a pleasure of mine to have you on.
Great. Thank you, Raymond. I really appreciate this. I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
And it was great to have you on. And thank you for watching this episode of Reality TV. If you want to see future episodes as soon as they're posted on this channel, please click the subscribe button down below and the post notification bell icon to the right of it. And if you want to read the political profile version of this, that will be seen on Anchor, that could be seen on anchorweb.org. I'm Raymond Bakari, and I'll see you on the next episode.